free to change it as much as they want. All right, so last time we talked about graphical user interface. It'd be a cool idea to talk more about graphical user interface. But firstly, before I get into the details of it, and don't type this because I'm going to wind up deleting it all. I mean, you can. What is the general process we got to do? You know, first thing you do is you make some kind of window. And even if you don't remember how you do it, right, you make some kind of window. And then you make some kind of frame, right? Make some kind of frame. Then you start creating things that go in the frame. Like if it's a label, right? You make some kind of label, and then you pack it to the specific frame. Label equals blah, blah, blah. When you create the label, do you have to specify what frame it's going in? See, I'm going to cheat myself. Down here, when we made a label, yeah, you specify which frame it is, right? So label equals whatever, 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 frame 1. And if we want a string to be part of our label, then we could have done that. You'd create a string var. And you make another label, right? Label 2. And you set which frame you want that to be in. And you make that text variable or something like that. I don't remember, but you know, I'm just flying off the top of my head. And then you pack these things. You got to pack the labels to get them to work. So label pack, whatever. Like I said, this is not real code. All right, so now we have 2 labels. We would need to pack them. And so if you remember, it's actually dot pack. And there's extra things you can do with it, right? You could you know, specify which side it goes on, whether it goes on the top, bottom, left, or right. Now, if you're going to make a button, it starts off being that easy, but then there's something else we have to add. So if you're going to make a button, B1 is equal to button, you know, and you got to pick what frame it's going to, and you got to pick what text it's going to say, and then you got to say what command it's going to run. Now, I don't remember whether it's CMD or the whole word, but whatever, you got to pick what command it's going to run. Like my function. So that when the user clicks on the button, it runs that function. Well, that function is something you have to write. We know how to write functions. DEF, you know, my func, and then you can make it do whatever, right? And then anytime the user clicks on that button, well, I'm not done though, because what have I forgotten to do? I got to pack that button as well. So, you know, b1.pack. So that's the general process. You keep creating controls. You keep calling .pack after each control. Each time you create a control, you have to pick a frame for it to go in. Last time we had 2 frames so that we could put something on the top and something on the bottom, right? We had a text and another piece, and we had a button and some text and another button and some text, and so that we had a top frame and a bottom frame. You keep creating controls and attaching them to a frame and then packing it so it actually shows up on the frame. Now, frames are not the only way of putting things on screen. There's something called a grid manager, and I know that out here in our, okay, if y'all are really typing all this, don't forget to put the triple quotes up there.
Yes, sir.
And triple quotes down here. Okay, and if you're actually going to make your window, so you don't have to look it up, it's TK with a capital T and a lowercase k. And then this is, you know, frame 1 is equal to frame blah, blah, blah. Got to figure out what you're going to put in there. You can always just Google up sample TKINTER program, right? And you'll find examples galore, hundreds of them, thousands of them. Probably 99% of them on Stack Overflow. So this one actually should have been s equals string var, because in this language the variable comes before the data type. So when you create your label, you know, it looks like that. Each one of these things is, I bet, a capital letter. I'd have to look. And then I forgot to make label 2, right? So label 2 equals label, capital L, like that, with some parameters after it. That's how you make each control. That's how you make a frame. There's going to be something between here, I'm sure. Like you're probably going to specify what window the frame goes in. You make a label, you specify what frame, you know, and then you can put some text in there, like what you want it to say. You know, this is a current score or whatever. And I know that there's extra things you could put, and you probably prefix this with like the word text equals, something like that. I'm just trying to get you to notice the general flow rather than the specific syntax. Because if you know the general flow, then it's real easy to Google up and learn the specific syntax. And a string var, you know, this is probably, you know, how you would do it. You use that as your creator, and then you pass in whatever text you want it to display on the screen. Like your dog's name, Saucy. Then when you create your label, you can specify what the text variable is and hook it up to string var. So that every time string var changes, it automatically updates the display. Other things to remember. You can call .get and .set on these controls to change the text. .get will get text or a number or whatever, and .set will change it. Let's go look at more of our examples. I know that we have stuff about checkboxes, for example.
You said .set would do what?
Changes the text. So buttons that change label values. Pretty much sure that we covered that adequately. Right? W8 equals TK, create a frame, a window. F1 equals frame, F2 equals frame. Oh, and by the way, let's create a string var and set it equal to 0. And so then we create a label, and we set its text equal to 0, but we create a second label and attach it to frame 2. And instead of giving it some text right on the spot, we hook it up with this string var. And then we create our labels.
So will a string var allow you to, like you said, you'd have that label there. Excuse me.
Bless you.
And so on your screen, would the string var allow you to put text into that screen?
Exactly, right. By calling string1.set, it changes the contents of the string var. And if you want to know what it is, you call string var.get or string1.get like that, and it pulls it back out.
Okay.
Very good question.
Into a function.
Right, right. So .set is a function where you pass in some text that you want the string var, that you want the control on the screen to say.
Mm-hmm.
And then .get will pull the text back out so that you could examine. We haven't done an input box where the user typed in some input yet.
Okay, I have
Yes, sir.
real quick question.
Oh wait, I probably wasn't done with that page anyways. Yes, sir.
The capital LAB1 or LABEL.
Right.
Is that a command or?
Yeah, you can think of it as a command. It's a function, just like TK and frame and
Okay.
string var for creating our labels.
Got it.
This particular demonstration actually created 4 labels to display on the screen.
Okay.
2 of them on frame 1 and 2 of them on frame 2. And apparently it had 2 buttons because we defined 2 functions to handle those buttons. And so we created some buttons down here, and one of the command called click 1, and the other button when clicked called click 2.
Okay.
Then we went crazy with a whole bunch of packs, packing frame 1, frame 2, packing our labels, packing our buttons, like that.
I was getting thrown off just a little because the lowercase l and the number 1 basically look the same.
Exactly. Yeah, I try to avoid lowercase l's, and I really didn't in any of my recent examples, and that's because label. I wanted to create.
Right. But I got it.
Here I did. Here I varied from
Yep.
using the lowercase l's, but
Okay.
maybe I should have just used capital L1 and capital L2.
Okay.
All right. So next example. Checkboxes. That'd be real useful to do, and it's a short sample. We might play with that. Here's one we haven't done yet, the message box. Message boxes are real easy, so why don't we just throw one of those into our application right away? So if you haven't already made a file, a Lecture V file, why not? Let's make one. If we hit Z, are we done for the semester? WXYZ, that means we're done in 2 weeks? No way. Then we'll do Z2 and Z3 and Z4 and whatever. All right, so ignoring all these comments or pushing them up to the top or the bottom or something, I need to import the TK library. So from TKINTER import asterisk. And I know from bitter experience that it's not a bad idea to import the library in both ways. And I don't even remember the problems that this solves. But like I said, from bitter experience in multiple semesters, I run into things where if we did not do imports TKINTER, well, yeah, can I spell? TKINTER as well. Import them in both ways. That can prevent some problems. I'm doing what's known as Voodoo Programming. I kind of know that maybe it fixes it, maybe it not, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it, right? Don't even know why I'm doing it, but I'm doing it. I've told people not to do Voodoo Programming. Tough, I'm going to do it now. Let's get our example back up on the screen. TKINTER. Once you do the import, we need to create our window. So, just like in our babbling, WN equals uppercase T, lowercase k, parentheses and parentheses. That's enough, honestly, to use the message box command. Method is what I should call it. Or is it just a function? I think it's just a function because it's not attached to any data. Let's go look. Yep, message box. There's nothing in front of it, so it's not something dot message box, so that means it's a function. But show info is attached to message box, so that's the method. So message box dot show info. We're going to give that a shot. Message box dot, is it capital I? Wish my short-term memory worked. Nope, it's all lowercase letters. Show info. My program is cool, end quote, comma, and this is an informational type message. Since it's an informational type message, we're going to put quote info. That's a very specific string. It needs to be set to one of 3 or 4 different values. Because there are info messages, there are error messages, and there are warning messages, and there may even be another kind. Let's just go with info. So quote, info, end quote. And we may as well put that main loop that we have at the bottom, just because every example on the internet is going to show it. That just tells the program to sit there until the window is closed. Once the window is closed, we could do something else. We could print, okay, all done, right? And it's not going to print that until the window is closed. I could even add a comment to the effect that wait until the window is closed. Turtle has a similar command. Forces the program to wait until the turtle window is closed.
And that's talking about the info window, correct?
Right, the window, the graphical user interface window, not the console window that we normally run.
Did type.
Ooh, message box is not defined. Well, 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 what have I done wrong? Let's go look.
I think we actually have to do the function, right?
It's all lowercase, that's why. And it is .show info. Do I have that part? Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, message box is lowercase m, lowercase b. All right, time to start crying. Why isn't message box defined?
Why would we not put def show it?
Well, that's for the buttons to click it. Yeah, why don't we have those functions? Because that would make, we create a button and we set the command equal to show it so that when the
Okay, I see.
user clicks on it. I was just trying to make it so that, all right, I'm actually sorely puzzled. Okay, I'm gonna try something. TKINTER dot message box. Yep, that got a little bit farther. At least it created a window. But TK, okay, fine. When at first you mess up, you Google TKINDER message box example. That's what it's supposed to look like. From TKINTER import message box. See, import asterisk has not been adequate. And this is interesting. Apparently, oh, that's for Python 2.7. Well, let's give that a shot.
Oh, we never did that though. Unless you mean that it automatically did it when we put.
When we put asterisk, it's supposed to bring in everything. This is one of the kinds of glitches I was talking about that I was hoping to forestall by doing that second import. But, fine. From TKINTER import message box. And then get rid of this TKINTER thing if you typed it. That was my experiment. And there we go, right? My program is cool. Okay, I want to reiterate how frustrating it is to me and how I have to relearn it every semester that this is sometimes not good enough, right? I had to import the message box. I didn't have to import TK. I could have said, okay, TK. I mean, you can do each one individually if you want, right? You could input label, don't do this. You could input frame, right? Like all that. But this is supposed to be enough. It wasn't for the message box. Fine. Hopefully we won't run into anything else like that. Okay, so as our example goes, we had a button that called that message box. To create a frame, what are we going, I gave the answer away. To create a button, what do you got to do? You got to make a frame to attach it to. You got to make a function for it to call. Let's do that. Let's do the function for it first. DEF show underscore message, parentheses in parentheses, colon, and then just tab that over. We could stick that up at the very top of the code. That's where I like to see all my functions. So I could conceivably cut that, but really I only have one line of code underneath it. I'm going to leave it like that. All right, let's make our frame. FR1, or just F1 is kind of how we did it last time, equals frame, parentheses, in parentheses, and what kind of information do we have to pass in when we do our frame? Let's cheat and look. You have to specify what window it is. For some reason, this is calling it root 3. I think this example had multiple frames and multiple windows on the screen. That would be fun to try out. Window 1, window 2, window 3. So F1 equals frame WN. We have to tie our frame to a window. Now let's make a button. B1 equals button parentheses, we want it attached to F1. We want its text to say info. Text equals quote info, end quote. And we want the command that it executes. Anybody remember whether it's CMD or COMMAND? It's the whole word, command. All right. Command equals show underscore message. And by the way, if you put the parentheses there, which you would expect you'd need to because it's a function, right? It won't work. This is like the one place where you put a function without putting the parentheses. And the reason for that is if you did put the parentheses there, it would run it right away. Not when they clicked it, but as the program was loading into memory, it would call show message and display the message box. We don't want that. This is a callback function, meaning that we're telling the TK interface library what we want it to do. Yo, I want you to call show message. And when it calls it, you can be sure that it puts the parentheses around it, or after it. What I forget to do? I keep emphasizing that there's steps. I forgot to pack it. So b1.pack. So it's going to be a very small little window because when we pack it, it shrinks the window and the frame to fit around the controls that you put in it. Or not. I forgot to pack the frame too. Alrighty, fine. F1.pack. Parentheses in parentheses. Make sure you put your parentheses after the word pack. Surely it's going to work now. There we go. And when I click info, it creates my message box. It'd be neat if this was centered over there. Maybe there's a way to do that. It'd also be neat if this was centered on the screen. But firstly, before we get all fancy like that, change this info to error. Oh, I'm wrong. It's still displaying the I there. My mistake. It's actually separate message box functions. If we come back here to our examples and do TKINTER message box error, we're going to see that it's show error along with show info and the other things.
Is button capitalized or is it lowercase?
All of the control names like TK and label and button have an uppercase initial letter. I don't think that's actually going to do it. Let's just try it. Let's change show info to show error. There, right? It changed the icon. Okay, so looking at it, I kind of made a mistake. And what do I mean by mistake? The title bar has got the message. And then the little teeny tiny message is down here. So I should swap those. What I'm going to do is do exactly that. The little menu bar, the little short description needs to come first. I could probably even just pass in blank if I wanted to. Let's see what that looks like. So I deleted the quote error off at the end, and I inserted quote, quote, comma there. All right. But maybe we want something there next to that little feather. Like, wow. Right there. Of course, you'd put something more interesting and professional than the word wow, but that's just a short description for the error, and then the actual text comes there. And so you can depend upon them. If you have a show error and a show info, then you're going to have a show warning. Yeah, let me run it, prove it works, and then I'll bring the code back. Yep, so the warning is just a caution sign. All right, to be extra awesome, we're going to try creating a second window. I'm not real sure about having this WN main loop anymore because I don't want to wait until the first window is done in order to create the second window. So I'm going to comment that out. How do we create a window? W2 equals capital T lowercase k parentheses in parentheses. And let's make a second frame. F2 equals frame parentheses W2. Attach it to that window. And if we were smart cookies, we'd just pack it right then and there so we don't forget like I did. Now let's make a label. And the question was, how do you change the text or remove the text, right? Because, you know, you might put a message on the screen and you want to remove it. Well, we'll see. L1, just short for label 1, equals capital L label. It's got to be attached to a specific frame. And then text equals message. That's real creative. End quote in parentheses. And we're going to need to pack that.
Would it be L1 or L2?
I haven't made a label yet, so I made that L1. Yeah, it could be L2 because it's on frame 2, but it's the first label I made, so just by habit, I called it L1. So L1.pack. Let's make sure that works. We should get 2 windows, and there we go. Kind of hard to move them around, but that one's got a message in it. When we create our window, it'd be nice if we could specify the size. Can we pick the size of the window as we create it, or can we pick the size of the frame as we create it?
Do the label.
We can certainly change the width of the label. You're right. We can certainly change the width of the label. Frame width, TKINTER.
So would they go
When you create the frame, well, that's bizarre. Height equals 2. This is looking a lot more reasonable, right? Let's try that. When we create our frames, let's set a height and a width. So, comma, height, E before I. You know the silly rule, E before I, except after whatever. I mean I before E. It's always E before I, really, in the vast majority of the words you see. So height equals, 600, comma, width equals 400. Where's my second window? I goofed it up by doing that. Let's go and look at that example a little bit more closely. Master equals TK, label text equals 1, dot pack. Well, aren't they being interesting? And what do I mean by that? They didn't attach the label to a frame.
Do F2.geometry and then do whatever height, width by height you want.
Okay. Alrighty. This is looking like we're going to have to do W2.geometry. I wonder if it works in the frame as well. Let's try it on the window first. Because since you told me this, I'm expecting it that you already know that it works on the frame as well. Let's find out. Okay, so down here in my second example, I'm going to delete those changes I made to F2. And I'm going to say W2.geometry, just to follow the example exactly before we start improvising. And then we specify our size in size quotes. So W2.geometry 600 by 400. Is it an X? Yeah, alrighty. Alright, now we have a great big window. How's about doing it by the frame instead? Comment that out and do F2.geometry. Does that go after or before the pack?
I put it before.
Alright. So 300 by 200. Alright, unless you have your code in front of you, I'm going to stick with going with window.
Yeah.
Alright. I'm going to undo that and go back to setting it like that. What about position? Window position. TKINTER. When window positions a window, it references the top left corner of the window. How do I change the size and the position of the window? Yagisanatod. Neat. Alright, so root.geometry sets the size of it. And then you can specify the width by doing a plus sign. Let's do that. So inside 600 by 400, let's move it over 200 pixels by 200 pixels. Whoops, plus 200 horizontally, 200 vertically. Alright, that about positioned it in the center. Can we get as a variable the width of the screen as a whole? I know we could get the width of the window. root.winfo underscore screen width. This method will fail with multiple screen setups, but there's a workaround. Well, this workaround looks pretty complex. Never mind. Alrighty. Okay, so we've got two windows going. What if we wanted to change this text after waiting for a certain number of seconds? So what you can do is you can call time.sleep, which is implying that we're going to have to bring in the time library. We're going to have to do import time to get this to work. So if we do import time and then call time.sleep 5 seconds, it's going to go to sleep. Or if you express it in fractional, it'll be in milliseconds. So I could just stick the import here because I'm about to use it here. That's slightly lame, but at least it reminds us that that's how we get it to work. Import time, time.sleep, 2 seconds. Now let's see if we can remove that text. Change label text. TKINTR.
So would you put time to sleep underneath where you want it to go to sleep, or does it have to be right next to each other?
You don't have to put them. The import should have gone up at the top, really, where our imports usually go. Okay, so what you can do is you can take your label and then treat it like it's a dictionary. Let's see if that really works. My label is called L1. So L1 subscript quote, text, end quote, comma. Let's actually give it another word. Wow, end quote. Now let me go back to my example and make sure I'm convinced that that's actually going to work. Nope, 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 that's wrong. It's a dictionary. So you use it like this, just like it was an array, except you put a key in there instead. And so the key is going to be the word wow. I mean, the value is going to be wow. The key is the attribute we want to change, which in this case is the text. Now what I'm curious about is I didn't even get to see the window. Right?
I feel like that made it take 2 seconds for Windows to pop.
It took 2 seconds for the window to pop. Yeah. Wonder why.
It woke up instead of went to sleep.
Well, we could certainly make it event driven. We could certainly pop up, make a button that set the text. How's that for generic message? Make TK enter window, pause, and then do something. Pausing root main loop. Starting and stopping. Adding a pause function to our game and game over. Is there a way to get it to show the window on the spot before we actually do the rest of the code? Okay. That makes me wonder. I'm going to comment that stuff out here, but I'm going to put an input statement in here. And I'm going to see if none of the windows show up until we hit enter. Yep. So it has to reach the end of the script before it launches any of the windows. Well, it didn't launch any of the windows either. They're probably behind everything. Let's try it again. Yeah, they're up here. At least one of them is. There's the second one. If I delete that, is it going to work the way it was? Yeah. Alright, well I don't know how to do the wait a couple seconds and then change the text, but you know how to change the text of the label. That's one way to do it. The other way to change the text of a label is to associate it with a string var. Like greetings equals text, string capital S var, and then create a label, L2 equals label parentheses F2 comma text variable equals greetings in parentheses, and then set or get greetings.set I am new text. And we better pack L2. I should have packed it as soon as I created it in my impression. Here's the word that I'm looking for and I'm not coming up with. In my opinion, that's the word. Is it just giving me fits because I have 2 windows going on? It did create our window that said wow. L2.pack. So user interfaces can be annoying. if I put I am new text here, what am I doing wrong about how I've attached my variables as compared to the last time I did it? S2 equals string var. It's exactly what I did. S2.text. Lab2 equals label, parentheses F2. Well, I didn't specify width. Could that possibly be the problem? Surely not, but let's find out. Comma, width equals 40. If that's it, I'm going to be in a... Okay. I'm going to comment out all the W2s and change the rest of them back to W1s. I guess there's only one thing I have to change to W1. W1 is not defined. Okay, what did I call it? WN? Yes, I did. Alright, so using the original window, but I'm trying to be fancy with two windows. String object has no attribute root. It's telling me I should not have tried to do it like that. I should have tried to do it the way that I originally did it. Maybe I needed to set the text before I assigned it to the label. So I'm going to cut it, paste it there. Wait, no. It has to go after that. That's what I was doing wrong. I'm surprised you have to set the text before you attach it to the label, because a button would be able to set it again.
Can you go back to the code right?
Yeah, I will, because I've made 20 changes to it, so I'm going to need to pause and give everybody a chance to catch up. I could put this back in the way it was, but I'm going to leave it alone. So I could plow through my examples to figure out how to do the text entry box, or I could Google it. Let's go find the examples. It's called entry. That seems vague. That's the grid interface anyway, so I'm going to leave that one off. This is showing creating a user interface from a class. But it looks like there's a missing page there. I'm going to have to go and find the rest of that code because it certainly needs to have more than that. Oh, they're just reversed. Okay, so if you're going to make a frame, you call it entry, and just for now, let's try packing. Even though this is using the grid, that's going to be our next exercise, is learning to use the grid, because it's actually more flexible than using, or in a lot of ways it's easier to understand than using .pack. So let's create an entry field. So E1 equals entry, parentheses, and we have to specify what frame it's going in. We're still on frame 2, I guess. And let's pack it to the left. So E1.pack, is it side equals left? Is it side equals quote left? I wish I'd left my window open. Yeah, side equals and then in all caps left. And let's put a button on the other side of it. We've already got one button right. So I probably called it B1.
Yep.
Let's do B2. B2. I could get in the habit of using uppercase letters real easily on this. I'm gonna change that to B2. B2 equals button. We have to pick a frame. F2. We have to pick some text. Text equals log in. We'll do the password dialog as a separate exercise. And right now, since I don't have a command ready for it to call, I'm just going to call the same window that we had up here, which was show message. So command equals show underscore. Can I type in underscore? MSG in parentheses, and then pack that, but send that one to the right.
You can make that command like as complex as you want to, right? Because it's just a function.
It's a function, and the function can do a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. Right now we're making our functions really trivial, right? All they do is change something on the screen or pop a window up, but all your gameplay would be in a button if you were making a game. Yeah. So B2, whoops, B2.pack, parentheses, side equals right, in parentheses. Let me run it, make sure that works before y'all. All right. Sure is wide. Why is it wide? Because during my testing, trying to get everything to work, I set the width of one of these labels pretty large. I think I'm going to remove that. Where it says width equals 40, if I delete that, is it going to make things better? Not look so ridiculous. Yeah, that looks cool. Right. So we could type in password and click login. But let's make a new function for the login thing to call. So we're not going to make the command equals show message. Let's just define another function for the button right here and now. Really, you know, we should put all the functions up at the top, but def login, parentheses in, parentheses, colon. The only thing, by the way, to note is that there's no way to pass in parameters, right? Because if I try to, like that, don't type it because it won't work. Just won't work. It'll call that function immediately as the program is loading. So there's, as far as I know, there's no way to make the button pass in an argument. All right, so what's login going to do? We need to get the text out of that entry field. And I happen to recall that my example right here shows exactly how to do that. .get. I bet I could attach a string var to an entry field as well as, you know, a label. But for now, when we click the button, we're going to say, you know, password equals, and our button, excuse me, our label, our entry field is called E1. So E1.get, parentheses in, parentheses. And then message box dot show error quote bummer end quote comma invalid password equals end quote plus password in parentheses. I had to put a plus there rather than a comma because I'm using concatenation to keep all of this to be one string. Oh, I forgot to change this where it says show message to actually call our new function. So where it says B2 equals button blah blah blah, change that show message to say login. Invalid syntax. That's because I lost my parentheses. All right, so if I type in something, that's my password, and click login, it's going to say invalid password equals ASDF. Now you really wouldn't want, you know, your program to be telling the world what you typed in. But so If we had time, what we would do is we would make a little example thing where you type in a name, we type in a password, and then we could compare both of those values against something hard-coded in the program, and if it worked, great, we'd pop up a login message. Otherwise, we'd, put an error message in, and we could even try to make it awesome and make it keep a track of errors, how many login tries. I'm just kind of winging it on that. I'm not sure how I'd make that work. All right. I'm going to code back up, but I'm going to see if I have a assignment already queued up over TKINT. Okay, so based on this, we know how to do a lot of stuff. So let's make some homework based on these ideas. Just going to be very generic, though. Using the tkinter library, write a Python script that creates a window with 3 buttons. Also, add a label. Make button 1, or make the first button. You can put any text that you want in it. Make the first button. Set the label to hello. Make the second button. Set the label to goodbye. And make the third button show a message box with some text of your choosing. What you put on the screen, or what you put on the buttons and the labels originally, is entirely up to you. All right. So I'm not going to specify how I want you to do it, right? I'm not telling you to put the buttons on the left and the label on the right and stuff like that. You can just figure that out as you want to, right? It could be as simple as just making one frame and then sticking all this thing into one frame, or if you want to divide it into multiple frames. What would be neat is if, well, the people at home aren't going to get to see this, if you had 3 buttons horizontally, and then in the next frame you had your label underneath that. So this is just a suggestion, but your window could look like this, where you had button 1, button 2, nothing, button 2, button 3, and then on the next frame, the one underneath it, right, you have your label. Something like that. But you can arrange it however you like. Make sense, gang? You really ought to do something more interesting than say hello and goodbye, but I wasn't feeling really inspired. How about B1 clicked, or, button 1 clicked, button 2 clicked, or whatever. What you put on the buttons and the label is entirely up to you. Doesn't have to be button 1 clicked, etc. You get to pick. Also the starting text of the label, you get to pick. All right, let's make a Dropbox.